Good Friday morning, everybody, and welcome into the TDR Trade Black podcast. I'm your host, Shad Dales. Gone all week. We were actually in Toronto. We got some interesting feedback that we all want to provide our audience with regards to our trip to the High Tide Canna Cabana dispensary. We came away very impressed. So both Anthony and I will give us our take and what we saw. What a crew they have building out there. A lot of other things. Excuse me, trying to talk here this morning here on the podcast. Pennsylvania news. Governor DeSantis, Curaleaf announcing their new hemp-derived product, among other things. So let's jump into it because there's lots to discuss here on a Friday morning. Welcome in TDR co-host Anthony Varrell. Good Friday morning. How was the flight back to Fort Lauderdale yesterday? Good.
I got on a nice direct flight instead of the convoluted connecting BS I had to deal with on the way there. And it was storming the entire time, so it was a fun flight.
Talk about heat in Toronto and construction. Holy cow, is that city under construction everywhere?
Yeah, I mean, it was a pain in the ass to get everywhere in the city.
Yeah. Lots to talk about because we haven't done a live stream since Monday, but there's a lot of news that broke. So let's touch on a lot of these things and begin with topic number one, and it involves Pennsylvania. We begin with, as I said, this week involving adult use. And Senator Dan Laughlin from Pennsylvania mentioned that there are enough votes to pass adult use cannabis in the state, and went even further, expressing optimism of it passing, even though there are still some outstanding issues to resolve. So, Anthony, seems like there's some progress that's being made here. But if you were an investor reading a lot of this news this week, how would you interpret it?
Yeah, so, I mean, we've been here, done this before. We've gone in circles in Pennsylvania. Governor Shapiro needs to get loud and start to back the bill, very loud, to get his constituents in line. This is great, though. This is momentum. We're hearing that it's got bipartisan support. It's got to focus on social equity. It's got to focus on small business. It's the degree of this passing this time is very good, potentially the highest it's been. That being said, the actual text of the bill has not been publicly released yet.
Correct.
So we don't have any idea what actually has been augmented or where the bill is going, just going off of what we've heard from several of the politicians in Pennsylvania. That being said, I mean, adult use could potentially bring the market up to about 2.8 billion in total, generate around 720 million in tax revenue and 45,000 jobs. So, I mean, Governor Shapiro, if you're hearing this, that could be quite beneficial for your state. It's time to kind of get with the program. Look at what Ohio's doing. Ohio is potentially going to be a very lucrative market, and Ohio is a red state that is bringing on adult use cannabis. It's about time Pennsylvania got with the program. And I mean, from an investment perspective, some of the top operators there are the usual, from a publicly traded MSO standpoint, are the usual suspects. Cresco, GTI, Jushi has a good footprint there. And then, I mean, you see Trulieve as well, which I know they're at the top of the list as far as retail locations in the state.
So when all said's done, we look at 45,000 jobs, $720 million in tax money, an upside potential of $2.8 billion. We've talked a lot about this state being one of the most lucrative states, but when you actually put things into perspective, this is pretty telling when you think about Ohio going live and this potential market size Ohio brings as well. But all said and done, we haven't seen the bill yet, so let's not get too excited and just keep things level when it comes to this news this week is what you're pretty much communicating, correct?
Yeah. I mean, I'll have more color on it or more insight into it once I can actually read the bill. And see where this is going and what the chances of it passing are. I'm praying that there isn't some sort of social equity program that we've seen in New York that could potentially get rolled out in Pennsylvania.
So
but that's obviously to be determined. And timeline-wise, I have no idea when the bill's actually going to be released.
Yeah, I was just going to say that timeline is as far as next steps when that bill will be released. But all in all, at least there's still conversation going. And you almost think like with a lot of other states that are about to go live, if they realize now, like we've got to act now, considering the amount of tax revenue that can be generated for the state, that's a huge number, $720 million.
Yeah.
So
that would be, I can't see a bad thing to that. And 45,000 jobs.
45,000 jobs. What is there? 500,000 jobs in this industry right now?
About 500,000. Yeah, I think it's probably closer to 600,000 as it is now. I mean, you got to figure Ohio's been hiring more people ahead of adult use. I know that some of the cannabis companies obviously have downsized across the board, so there's a push and pull going on. But I'd be willing to bet it's closer to 600,000 now.
Yeah, that's like close to 10% right there, 45,000 jobs. So, all right, that's topic number one into the wire. TDR Trade Black podcast. Shad Dales with Anthony Varrell here on a Friday morning. It's Friday, so let's welcome in Guap. Good to see you, my friend. How was the week?
Good morning, guys.
Good morning. How are you?
Doing well. Yeah, I just got off riding roller coasters for the last few days, so I'm hanging in there.
Well, wanted to have you in. I know always good to have people's different perspectives regarding our next topic. Before I get into that, nice T-shirt, Anthony. You've got a few comments on that right now. Where'd you get it online?
I got it at Smart and Safe Florida on their directly on their website.
So smartandsafe.com, and yeah, that's a sharp T-shirt. Nice T-shirt to say the least. Okay, and that coincides basically with our next topic.
smartandsafeflorida.com.
smartandsafeflorida.com. So if you are wanting adult use to pass, you want to push that narrative forward, and specifically if you're from Florida, make sure to purchase that T-shirt, and let's push this narrative forward. But yes, great T-shirt, as we're getting lots of great feedback here on the podcast this morning. But as I said, it coincides with our next topic. News broke earlier this week involving, once again, Governor DeSantis. And if there was any questions on where he stands when it came to cannabis, those questions have been answered this week, where he recently said one of the main reasons he vetoed a recent hemp bill was because he hopes this industry will support his campaign to prevent adult use cannabis passing on election night come November 5th. If you didn't think things were going to get interesting and political, they are now. So what do you make of this, Anthony?
I mean, to be honest, I didn't even really want to talk about this today. It just doesn't make sense. The fact that he's so vindictive to the point that he's saying that he vetoed the hemp bill because the marijuana industry wanted it to pass.
It's pretty blunt.
To me is ludicrous.
Yeah,
he's being honest, but I mean, it's ludicrous. The Florida MMTC program brings medicine to 600,000 plus patients now in the state of Florida, generates $2.5 billion worth of revenue, employs a hell of a lot of people, and also generates a lot of tax revenue for the governor's state. So for him to be vindictive to the point where he's going to veto something simply on the merits of that they wanted it to pass is a complete slap in the face. Like, I don't understand really what's going on. This is political posturing and just, I think, complete misdirection, because Ron can't be that stupid. If he actually gets on stage and has to actually back up, we're at 800,000 patients currently in Florida. But if Ron has to get on stage and justify the hemp industry, the differences of the hemp industry versus the medical marijuana program in Florida, he's not going to have a leg to stand on. There's no argument that he could make that he's in favor of one and not in favor of the other, except for he has a personal bias towards the operators that are leading the way in the medical program in Florida. And I'm not going to name names, but he's actually said that several times when addressing the reasons for his stances on the medical program, which to me is, again, just ludicrous.
I understand lobbying all the time, and that's the way politics in general is. But when it comes to the military and knowing his background, that's the part that surprises me, because that's someone where it's like there's this definitive line. You can't sway people, and money doesn't really come into factor when it comes to a lot of that stuff. But it blows my mind away knowing that he is a military vet and knowing the support that this industry gets from military veterans. And he's bluntly saying a lot of this stuff out in the public right now. Would love to just pick somebody's brain. We're actually, again, trying to get through to Congressman Brian Mast and have him on the podcast relatively soon. But Guap, I think to Anthony's sentiment, this is just like, can you speak any more true? Wow, as far as your stance on this, and man, does it ever grab people's attention as to how he's handling all this right now?
Yeah. What's really funny is the legal cannabis operators in Florida did want him to not veto. That's a double negative, but they want these hemp-derived cannabinoids to go away. So he's saying, I vetoed it because that's what the cannabis industry wanted. Not really. That's not even true. So I'm going to quote myself here, but the prohibition of cannabis has everything to do with money, power, votes, influence, and it never had to do with science, public health, or public opinion.
There you go.
I'll add, it never has anything to do with logic or common sense either. So this doesn't even make sense. I think the only way it could make sense is if he's sort of saying, look, it should be medical only. I don't want it to be rec, but it doesn't matter what he thinks. The people are going to vote, and he's going to have to go with it. So
yeah. Mark Landers, you actually make a good point. He wasn't against the medical cannabis patients registered campaign on. It's more of the adult use. So I understand that, and that's actually a good point for correcting me. But clearly, this is going to get very political. I will say that his approval rating now sits at 51% in the state, and last we heard it's over 65% when it comes to Floridians wanting to adult use to pass. So, is it just me, or has this guy's approval rating slipped more and more and more since the early days of COVID, where he was hailed as like the next president? Because it just seems like this guy can't get out of his own way. And I don't know who's running his campaign or who's like his communications director as far as like, running this show. But there is a lot of things that he says where I'm just like, man, what are you doing? You had the country behind you, not to mention Florida, but the country behind you. When you look at some of these debates on the federal or the national scale, he just seems to keep on slipping amongst the Floridians in his approval rating.
Yeah, I mean, he slipped in his approval rating, but I wouldn't attribute it to cannabis. I'd attribute it more so to women's rights. That he's taken a complete.
Well,
I don't even want to talk. We're not going to go there.
Yeah,
yes, I would attribute it. I would attribute it more to women's rights versus cannabis as to why his approval rating has gone down over the last couple of quarters.
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll keep posted there. But yeah, again, it just seems to be there always information regarding Governor DeSantis every single week that turns your head. Next up, and let's talk about the hottest topic in the industry over the past month, and it involves hemp and multi-state operator Curaleaf, who launched their own hemp-derived product. A lot of people like this announcement, and I think it actually takes Curaleaf, or they're taking a step further when it comes to diversifying overall. But have you guys had a chance to see, I guess, the investment community, Anthony, like what has been the feedback so far on this announcement?
Yeah, I mean, there's been mixed takes. Everybody's got their 2 cents, on it. The fact of the matter is Curaleaf now has branded cannabis products that live outside of a dispensary. That's huge. Curaleaf now has brand awareness at potentially, not yet, but at major big box retail. They're going to find their way into liquor stores. I think they're going to find their way into any points of distribution that they can. Boris and the team at Curaleaf have immense resources compared to all of the startups that are in the space. Don't get me wrong. The players that are in there right now, they're established. They have customers and they're selling a lot of product. I would not take lightly the resources that a company like Curaleaf has and the brand that Select has to go onto the shelf. I mean, Select Zero Proof looks like a nice drink. They're also, for everybody that is asking the question, I spoke to Matt Darren yesterday. They are sourcing naturally derived cannabinoids for the beverages. So that is a box that's checked off. I love the move for Curaleaf. I think that this can actually bring people from outside the dispensary inside the dispensary.
Yeah.
Because if you go to a Total Wine, you're a Canna Curious, or you go to a liquor store, you're a Canna Curious consumer. You try the beverage. It's got the Select branding on it. It's got the Curaleaf branding on it. You now have the association with the brand. So if you're a customer that has not found your way into a dispensary, and a lot of people don't want to go into a dispensary or don't feel comfortable going into a dispensary, this could break that barrier down and actually bring people into the traditional market. I love the move. I'm going to buy the products as soon as they're available to try them out, and look forward to getting Boris on for more comment on this in the future.
Smart branding move. You agree, Guap?
Absolutely. Yeah. If you're trying to build a national brand, which Curaleaf absolutely is with Select, this is a great move, and you should applaud it from that perspective. Cookies, we could go do a whole show on them, pros, cons, missteps, etc. But their products and more specifically, their brand is everywhere in most states, even in these vape shops we've talked a lot about. So they've established themselves. Would I have loved to see moves like this earlier? Sure, but I think this is a great way to get that brand name in front of more people.
If you're a CEO of a competitor, is this something that you're strategizing? We've talked to a few people and they're like, well, it's not really something that we specialize or focus on. But man, that when you draw it up that way from a pure branding perspective, that's a smart move. So if you're a CEO of a competitor, is this something that you're reviewing?
Yeah. I mean, two things in the comments. Anthony, you're completely correct. Tilray is completely missing the boat on this. A Sweetwater 420 hemp-derived seltzer makes complete sense. Everyone that's a beer drinker already understands the brand, and you literally have 420 in the name. They're completely missing the boat.
Yeah.
And then Mungie Boy, we don't hate hemp. I want hemp to get regulated just like cannabis to an extent, and I want the synthetic BS that is a consumer safety issue to go away. That's the argument against hemp. The argument's not totalitarian. Hey, we need to just do away with hemp products altogether. I think the hemp beverage category is going to be here for a long time, and it deserves its place within the cannabis ecosystem. So it's not you can't really look at it in a totality sense.
It's incredible how much this topic of hemp has just absolutely blown up within this industry in the last 60, 90 days.
Well, I mean, it's simply because if you look at, I can go to the Total Wine by my house right now in Florida and go buy cannabis beverages. That's a very, very big deal. That's an industry changing trend. Okay. I mean, that's why this has gotten put under a magnifying glass so heavily. I mean, you have a major big box retailer in the United States carrying legally compliant THC beverages.
Yeah.
That's cause for conversation, and that also changes a lot of the conversation around hemp, because people haven't realized the accessibility to buy hemp flower online, that when you test it, a lot of it's actually hot flower and is cannabis.
Yeah.
The hemp beverage trend has put the hemp industry under a magnifying glass, and now people are actually waking up to understand what's actually going on within it, because I didn't know THC 0 and Delta 10 and HHC and all these vapes and the widespread availability of it. The way that I got there was starting to look at the hemp beverage category very seriously, probably 8 to 12 weeks ago.
So as we learn and have more of these discussions, and we had, what was this gentleman's name last week? I was Adam Terry from Cantrip.
Adam Terry from Cantrip.
And he was like, I'm fully in support of obviously descheduling cannabis at one point. And it's just like, as this industry, the hemp side, Guap, matures more and more and more, I think in a lot of ways, us cannabis investors need to start looking at this from a different light. Do you agree with that? And like, want this to succeed too?
It's all cannabis. That's the point.
Yeah.
I think the hemp derived market, the way the synthetic cannabinoids have come out, the way I can drive 10 minutes and buy THCA flower, which is just regular cannabis in North Carolina, where there's not a rec program. This is all headline risk. So I'm not sure quite how we get there. We're all waiting for the Farm Bill language to get solidified. But in the meantime, I think we're going to see that stuff eventually go away or get sort of pushed out by legal state cannabis programs. And we're going to continue to see these low dose beverages succeed in a different way that's not stealing market share. If any way, it's
agreed,
helping people sort of normalize cannabis in their lives. I mean, if you can bring a 6-pack to a party and people go, this is cannabis, it's not, as I'll talk about later in the mic drop part, it's not smoking. It's something that's very accessible. So I applaud the move, and I want to see more of it, to be honest.
100%. You actually made a good point, or at least your reaction when you saw somebody the 6-pack of cannabis beverages and that type of thing. I don't think people are like that now. I think it actually drums up conversation in an entire room.
Yes.
And that's not a bad thing, but I think eventually in due time, it doesn't become a conversation, just becomes part of like everybody's lifestyle, which is where you want to get to one day. But in order to get that, as JJ's writes, and I agree, it's all about distribution, and distribution obviously helps people be more, I guess, educated, and most importantly, just understand where the industry's headed, which is all important. But I'll leave this. Boris Jordan tweeted out this week, great progress. We're very excited about our new line of fully compliant hemp-derived products. Production line is in full swing. This means national distribution for our select brand. I've always believed beverages would play a big role in our industry, and Curaleaf is committed to being the biggest player. And when that man types those types of words, I believe 100% what he's saying as far as wanting to be the biggest player in the space when it comes to this, right, Anthony?
Yeah. I look forward to diving deeper into it with him. And I mean, I've said beverages were going to be big for a while, just was off on the hemp part.
Yeah,
as being the tip of the spear, but we got to get there one way or another.
Well, and I believe you 100%. We've said this is probably 8-10 years out, but you almost wonder if this industry continues to mature and develop as far as hemp-derived products, if this actually happens a lot sooner than what we originally are anticipating. But there's only one way to find out, and we're about to find out. So that's what's great.
It'll be the events. It'll be the sports stadiums.
They're in the Panthers. They're in the Panthers arena right now.
Are they really?
You can buy THC beverages in the Panthers arena.
That's amazing.
Backyard barbecues. It's all gonna get that foot in the door, if you will.
I'd be curious to know what they're selling at those games when it comes to that product.
If there is a Game 7, I will be there and I will be drinking them. So I will be sure to show you exactly what they are.
Oh, poor Anthony on what was it, Tuesday night? We were out downtown Toronto, so AKA Canada, and we were at the actual bar, big, huge sports bar next to where the NHL Toronto Maple Leafs play, and every single person in that was an Oilers fan except Anthony. But
well, I would expect that in Toronto.
Yeah, of course. But
there's not a lot of people moving. There's not a lot of people moving from Florida to Canada. It's the reverse trend.
How many people that live in Fort Lauderdale were in Canada for Game 5? But you know what? You were that person. But we were busy all week long filming at the High Tide dispensary, and we actually stopped at the Value Buds SNDL, one of their dispensaries, and spoke with the Ontario Attorney General Doug Downey. We'll get into that in a moment. But while we were busy, there was retail expansion that happened this week involving some notable players. Anthony, you want to bring us up to speed on what we heard this week?
Yeah, I mean, Ascend had retail expansion in New Jersey, which was relocating one of their locations to Wharton. And then they also opened a new location in Pennsylvania. And then this morning, Verano announced that they opened 2 new locations in Florida, in Naranja and Port Richey. I had absolutely no idea where Naranja, Florida was until this morning. It's Spanish for orange, but it is in Dade County, actually, on the way to Homestead. That brings their total dispensary count up to 77, which I know that we've talked to Aaron Miles before, and they wanted to get to that 80 plus before adult use comes online, so they are well on their way there.
Okay, what was the name of that town again?
Naranja.
Okay.
Naranja. It's orange in Spanish.
Naranja.
I'm assuming it's one of the cities in between Miami and the Keys. That's all citrus farming down there.
Huh. Interesting. Always learning something new. All right. So them and Ascend Wellness, some interesting stories to say the least, but I know a lot of the retail investors follow that story closely too. We're going to have actually a lot more content pertaining to Ascend coming up the next couple of weeks. So we will keep you guys posted. But nice to see expansion, right, Guap?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's just it's time to spread our wings and move about the country for sure from a retail perspective.
Yeah. All right. Now time for our last topic before we bring in Dan for the chart guys. But I think Anthony and I want to recap basically our week. And I know you, Guap, and a few others from the High Tide story or gang is going to be interested to hear what we have to say. But, Raj had mentioned earlier this week on the live stream that, look, when I look at some of these MSOs and some of the size of the dispensaries, we actually look at smaller and less is more, 12 to 1,500 square feet dispensary facilities. And I will say that I was curious to see what that would look like and what he meant by that. But when we pulled up, Anthony, when we walked in, I was very, very impressed with everything that they had on display. We're going to have a lot of that inside content of what that dispensary looked like early next week. But the most important thing, Anthony, you've always talked about the importance of a bud tender and walking you through. They had 3 people on staff there. And when we walked in, and we did walk in prior to working hours beginning, so we were the only ones there, but man, it did pick up in a hurry once it did open up. But 3 people there at all times that provided a lot of education and guidance. And it was great for me because I'm still learning a lot of this stuff. And you obviously are a lot more sophisticated buyer. But if there's 1 or 2 main takeaways that you found based on being in that dispensary, what were they?
Yeah, I mean, I thought the store was great. I mean, High Tide is a client of ours, so I mean, it was great to be up there filming the segment. And I mean, walking in the store, it was impressive. It was a beautiful store. Everything was laid out that was strain specific, indica, hybrid, sativa. You had concentrates and gummies. You had glassware. You had their new fast tender kiosk for people that don't want to engage with a bud tender, such as myself, that just walk in, select what they want, and then get out. It was very thoughtfully programmed, and the bud tenders were absolutely just rock star informative.
They were.
They knew everything about everything that was in those cases. They knew everything about the products. They guided me to buying 4 of the higher end strains, and 4 different brands and 4 of the high end strains. Product was all good. It was very impressive compared to what I've seen in the Canadian market in years past. It was rivaling some of the higher end stuff you'd see in the Florida medical program. And I thought it was a very, very good overall impression on the overall business. That being said, I mean, the one takeaway I would give, not in a negative sense, but just being objective, it was a little bit deer in headlights finding different products. So, I mean, there were a lot of products that were laid out, and there wasn't like a master list or like a master board or something that I could refer to be like, all right, here are all the strains. Now, where can I go find this strain within the products? Everything wasn't mixed together, but it was, like I said, it was overwhelming for me trying to find a product. But that being said, I was like a kid in a candy store considering the diversity of products that they had. I mean, you go to the gummies, they had Gruen, Wana, Wild, all of the top brands that you would see in the States.
Yeah.
They had Jeter, and they had a bunch of infused pre-rolls. They had large format flour, small format flour, a lot of really good products with a lot of really good branding and packaging.
Yeah.
Overall, it was a very, very good experience going in that dispensary and seeing what High Tide has in person.
Yeah. Glop, I found this interesting. They average between 250 and 400 consumers on a daily basis. What was the average basket size that they indicated to us?
The average basket size indicated was anywhere between $30 to $40, which is it's a healthy spend. I mean, I think the average basket size in the States, though, is like 86, and the average basket size in New York, and I'm just saying it because it was extremely high, is about 126.
Well, the thing that I found,
market.
We talk about pricing, right? There was over 1,200 SKUs at that one dispensary location in itself, which is like a huge supply of anything and everything that you need, whether you're a newbie or whether you're a veteran within the space. But one of the people we spoke to, his name was Rahul Patel. He's their area manager. He actually was very well versed in the space living in India. And basically that country is years behind where Canada is. And he specifically moved to Canada for this opportunity. So a wealth of knowledge and history pertaining to the actual plan itself. But I won't say any names, but there was a company that he started working with before, and he just said their prices were 4 times as high as what High Tide's were. So I asked the question, like, what is the most important thing that consumers want when they walk in here every single time? Obviously, selection is one, but price is hugely important. And
I mean, the pricing was the pricing for me was crazy. I mean, I was paying, some of the eighths I was buying were $15 US.
Right.
For instance, like the Pure Sun Farms that I bought, which was actually really good flour. I can understand why Village Farms is trending to the upside in their flour sales quarter over quarter. Yeah, they're starting to really reap the benefits of dialing in those facilities in BC. But yeah, it was a $15 and change eighth, which I'm paying 29 to 60.
I know,
in the Florida medical program.
Yeah,
Chris, it was really good. It was well worth the $15, if not worth more.
Well, you always wonder. It's just like if you come down in price, it's just like, do you? I guess look, they've got a lot of suppliers that basically providing different SKUs, but like you said, like the quality of product was there. Another thing I found guap too is that they really branded and marketed, to Anthony's point, was the elite members section. So I asked the question, what was included within this case? But they had different product that was available at different prices. So they just say, that's why their elite membership is what, 44,000 now. And they're showing the price difference between what you can buy specifically if you're a member or not a member. And then it's an annual subscription basically to become a member for $40. And, if you actually became a member right then and there, you probably would save, based on your basket size of buying a couple things within that elite membership case, you probably would save well over $40 just on that one transaction. So smart move to basically build a database, because everybody knows it's not just about selling products, it's about building data in this day and age. And they've done a very smart job of doing it. But I know that you, along with a lot of other barnacles, will be very happy with what we came away with. It's impressive.
Yeah, it was great to hear your impressions. And it's all about loyalty, building that relationship over time. I've got a graphic for Arns to show just with the number of dispensaries and what the retail landscape looks like in Canada. So since this graphic was created, Canna Cabana added their 173rd store. You can see Value Buds, Tokyo Smoke, etc.
Yeah,
Fire and Flower, RIP, but there's still the name's still out there for now. So yeah, it's an evolving landscape. They've got about I'd say about $1 billion worth of runway if they get up to 300 locations in Canada, and I would expect them to, this is my guess, expand to Germany before they can get into the U.S. Just based on how long exchanges will take to get comfortable. But in the meantime, it's looking pretty sweet for them, and they they included a new stat in their last earnings report, which is $1,500 of sales per square foot. So that lets you compare High Tide versus other dispensaries in Canada, in the US, and even some of the retail, like the Costco's and Home Depots and Target out there. So it's
I would say the one big key learning from Toronto this time, there are dispensaries absolutely everywhere.
So they got rid of their lottery license, because they had, I think at one time, like, just to give people an idea, there's close to 15 million people in this province. And if you go from like the American border up to like the Quebec border, like that's a 9 to 10 hour drive. So think about that. There was 26 dispensaries. They got rid of the lottery license, and then suddenly overnight they became flooded with dispensaries everywhere. But continue your thought, Anthony.
I was going to say, I mean, what Raj is doing, like basically dialing in the price and like competing in price wars, as well as collecting everybody's data to create sticky customers. Like, he's going to be the beneficiary of those other dispensaries eventually going out of business.
Totally.
Because the hyper concentration of the dispensaries that are in the GTA and specifically the Toronto area right now, that's not sustainable.
Yeah.
He's got a dispensary 2 doors down from the location that we were at on Parliament Street. Granted, I saw all of the traffic going into his store versus their store, which is a testament to what they're doing in terms of business. But I mean, the saturation is not sustainable.
Well, think about this. Yeah. And I know the stat I actually asked their attorney general. We actually attended a Value Buds dispensary later, but 80% is legal, 20% is black market now within that market.
Yeah.
A lot of the black market dispensaries that we found out are actually run by families. So like they own these companies and they're working around the clock right now. So, I don't, that doesn't have a long-term business stability attached to it, in my view. And, you've got a well-sustained model, and some of the management at High Tide was saying too that they want to open another 20 to 30 dispensaries in Ontario just in the short term as well, knowing the cap size has increased to 150. So some pretty impressive numbers, to say the least. And to Anthony's point, yes, they are a client. I'm not pumping this up, but I will say, like, when you're looking at a smaller dispensary, you kind of come in thinking, okay, is this going to be everything that Raj is basically backed up to be? But it's efficient and very effective for its size, and people just want to get in, get out, and everything that was there was provided based on the knowledge and experience of a lot of these bud tenders to walk you through a lot of that stuff. So kudos to them. Speaking of our attorney general interview, we did talk a lot about some of the current status going on within that market, but we did attend Value Buds. What was your take with SNDL's dispensary, Anthony?
I liked Value Buds. It was more of a discount model and felt more like a discount model versus what we saw in Canna Cabana. But that being said, I mean, I know SNDL has the higher end dispensaries with the Nova products, as well as I think it's a Superette location. So, I mean, the Value Buds serves its purpose within the chain. I mean, I did like how Value Buds had everything displayed on their boards. So I could walk in. I didn't even have to look at the product. I didn't look at the product first. I looked at the boards. And I, as a consumer, was actually surprised to see like green crack, blue cheese, like different strains that I maybe didn't see in other dispensaries or that I haven't seen. And the fact that I saw those on the boards, then I go straight to the bud tender and say, hey, how's this? What's the quality? Should I purchase it? Etc. They definitely both had their merits, but it was great to see this stuff in real life. And both dispensaries were busy. Value Buds had people coming in and out the entire time we were there as well.
Was there anything you'd tweak with that location as well for any constructive criticism or just feedback from a customer?
Big fan of Schwinn Yellow, Anthony.
Yeah, it's bright. I won't lie.
Yeah, I mean,
overhead fluorescent.
Yeah, I mean, I would change the color scheme, but I mean that's more like just personal.
Yeah.
Personal preference, I guess.
Yeah.
I'm assuming, knowing how Zach is and the interactions that we've had with Zach, I'm assuming there's some sort of psychological reason or some sort of marketing cadence as per the color schemes and look and feels of those dispensaries.
Well, to your point, if you're driving down the street, it pops, it grabs your attention, but I definitely think it's more for the discounted audience. But there are different, obviously, dispensary models that they have that obviously skew towards different end users. You're smiling. What do we see? Value Buds looks like a rebranded Blockbuster, right? Spongy boy. But look, if you're driving down the street, it grabs your attention. But again, very nice of them, obviously, to set up, obviously, the location, us to do that interview with the Attorney General, Doug Downey. We'll have that out next week. Gives you kind of a better idea as to what kind of landscape the Ontario market looks like. He actually was appointed in around the same time federal legalization happened within that country 5-6 years ago. So get some good feedback on what they're trying to do to combat, obviously, the black market, and then more importantly, where this overall industry is going and the jobs it's going to create. So that's going to create opportunities for
We're about to have a war in the comments between the Barnacles and the SNDL guys. I can feel it brewing.
Yeah, I could see that. Regardless, if we have any takeaways for both of our audiences, all is well for both companies, and there's plenty of opportunity. This is a city that right now, I was saying to Anthony, if you go 1 hour west, which is Hamilton of Toronto, and 1 hour east, which is Oshawa, that's 10 million people. And so far, just in that greater Toronto area, in the first 6 months, they brought in 1 million immigrants, 1 million. And they want to actually increase Canada's population from 40 million to 55 million within the next 10 years. And they're all going to go in that area. So you can understand why the cap size is increasing. And to the Attorney General's point, in the early stages of this industry, there was a lot of fast money, and those companies basically have defaulted. And now it creates a huge opportunities for those that are stuck around. So plenty of love going around for two big companies and behemoths within that market. So big opportunity, to say the least. Go ahead, Guap.
There's Starbucks, there's Dunkin', there's McDonald's, there's Burger King. I mean, there's room in retail in every segment for at least two companies to succeed. So while I understand the healthy rivalry and all that, if you're a fan of, let's just say, the retail sort of thesis over some other types of companies, I would urge people to spend more time talking about that and less about slamming the competition, if you will.
Gord, I asked that question with the AG about the excise tax.
Excise tax.
Yeah, he was a true politician in that situation. Kind of like there's only so much that he could say, but as far as the validation of it all and will it be retabled, that's definitely something that's going to happen again, is what the big takeaway was. So certain things that they can and can't say at this time because they only have so much information in front of them. But It is something that he feels very strongly. And I asked that question if it will be retabled. And the definitive answer was yes, it will. So hopefully that helps. Coming up in just a moment, we're going to have mic drop with Hugo up here on a Friday afternoon. But before we do that, let's concludes basically Into the Wire. You guys are going to chime off to the side for a second, as it's now time for segment number 2. It's Fridays with Dan the Chart Guys. Arns, cue the music. Happy Friday, my friend. How are things? Good week?
Things are good. Yeah, glad to be back. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I missed a lot as I was gone this week, but for the most part, it just seems like everything still seems like pretty stale, not a lot of movement. But is there anything notable that you saw that you want to share with us?
It is mostly still slow grind down. As I mentioned last time on, I did make a stab at a couple longs and positioned a little bit, but if we get another leg down, I'll just exit those close to break even, maybe a tiny loss, and be back to patiently watching. And so just still very protective because we're not seeing anything that is telling us anything is shifting at the moment.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see about this public comment period, which is supposed to conclude. There was some rumors that it would be extended past July 22nd, but I'm sure if it is, or even short term after that, there's going to be some rebuttal and some feedback. But it's going to be like this, I think, for the sustainable future over the next 6 weeks. I could be wrong, but I don't see it any other way. But saying that, let's take a look at the first charts and let's jump into NASDAQ trading. CGC, Canopy Growth, what are we seeing?
So just another bear flag. We had a couple day bounce here, set a new resistance level at 785, and then drop down to fresh lows. So anytime I see one of the major leaders, just in terms of, volume and things like that from the trading perspective, this for me increases the probabilities that other names that are forming potential daily bear flags will also confirm them as well. And now, 609 is the next major level that we're looking at on CGC, but it's now been 5 weeks of slow grind down, and you can see there hasn't even been there hasn't even been one solid green day. The only little green, tiny green there, but it's just not shifting. And so my simple statement is, as long as we set a daily low or high on every bounce, the bears have control. So nothing is changing at this point.
So if you are in this now, as I said a couple of weeks ago, you got to wait this out until the fall, I would think, at this point, correct?
Yeah. I mean, you don't want to be selling after 5 weeks of slow bleed into fear and weakness. Ideally, we're positioning for that in advance and anticipating that. So if still in positions at this point, we are looking to the fall. But again, we've got to see, in my opinion, Florida, the vote is going to be so huge here because
I know
if you lose that, you definitely can see another opportunity for bears to just pounce on this sector again as things are hopeless in the short term. And of course, Schedule 3 and all that. But again, when do we see an actual concrete change from Schedule 3? I don't know. I don't have that answer. So a lot of hope is riding on the Florida vote.
Yeah, well, there was a big moment in the psychedelic space a couple of weeks ago with the first FDA meeting with MAPS, and the feedback was terrible. And you saw a lot of the stocks the next day because there's a lot of hope pertaining. And that actually has the same kind of value as like an election night regarding Florida. So it's either strikeout or home run. You're on one side or the other, and that's just the risk that you have to take. But that's still months away as we focus on the here and now. Let's focus on another Canadian player. Company, as I said earlier, that we were actually filming this week was High Tide in Toronto. What are we seeing right now with them?
So ideally, bulls want to hold the low of the earnings reaction, which is 220. And again, it is one of the stronger names overall. If it looked like everything else right now, it would have done this and we'd be trading down here. So that's one positive. But if we do break that 220 low, then we're just viewing it as our good old fashioned equilibrium. And we're just going to watch for something like this through most of July. So 220 key support in the short term. If we break it, then the next most important level for me is 192.
So the here and now, the number to watch is 220.
Yep.
Okay, let's now focus on the ETF arena. Let's switch now to MSOS. What are we seeing?
So this is what I'm talking about, where this is a potential daily bear flag. The fact that CGC has already confirmed it increases probabilities that MSOS will as well. 688 is the current lowest price that we've seen. New resistance level is the high of this bounce, 739. And, the last 5 days, you can see every time we get into the 730s, it's being defended by the bears, 734, 737, 39, 36, 32. So just the same thing is up here. You know, we established a resistance zone right around $8, and then we saw another leg down, and the bears are hoping for the same thing, a new resistance zone. Do we see another leg down? And right now, there's nothing telling us that there's a shift taking place. So you got to go with the trend as the most likely scenario. And we're watching that 688 level into next week.
Yeah. Shorters are out, aren't they?
They are. Or really just an absence of bulls. You know,
yeah.
Not like there's a ton of bears out there, in my opinion, but there's just no bulls.
Yeah, exactly. All right. So next up, one of the best performing, I think, advisory shares, Dan Aarons mentioned a couple weeks ago that YOLO is the best performing ETF. So what are we seeing as of late here?
So you show me this chart, and I would say this looks exactly like MSOS to me. And I'm sure, the numbers are a bit different, but in terms of price action, it's not really doing anything different to me. And actually, let's just pull these up side by side real quick.
Yeah.
And compare MSOS on the weekly on the right to, it's not the weekly, but here we go. So MSOS, same kind of pattern where you get these big upper wicks and then we roll over, big upper wicks, roll over. So I'd say one difference, the low of MSOS in March 730 has broken. The low of YOLO in March 317 has not broken yet. So holding on a little bit better, as you mentioned. And, the biggest thing for me here is the dollar volume. It's just non-existent in the sense that, every day, the average 20-day volume is, we'll give it benefit of the doubt, 60,000 shares. I mean, we're talking less than $200,000 traded a day. And that is just nothing, for one person, $200,000 is a lot of money, but for a market, it's just absolute ghost town.
Yeah. So I think the common theme as we continue to see this is just no bulls. There's no volume going on right now. And at what point, I think, maybe explain a little bit further, as you said prior to that, is there a point at all in this summer where you look at things and say, with no volume and these things continue to bleed out, is there a good entry point for something like this that you would step in, that you'd be looking at?
Yeah. So, I mean, for me, it was confidence last week in short-term bounces taking place. And we got a very weak short-term bounce. So I made an entry in terms of, okay, let's see if the bulls can do anything. And now I'm getting the information every day that goes by. Nope, they're not doing anything. So just as an example, TCNNF, I entered in the 860s and exited half of that just being really protective in the right? Entered in the 860s, exited half in the 880s. So my break even is 840. And so at least I have a little breathing room. I can currently it's up over my entry and I can just let it play out a little bit without sweating too much.
Yeah.
But again, if we get this bear flag confirming and another leg down, I'm just going to hop right back out again.
Yeah.
And so again, you got to have the catalyst in this sector, because when you have other things like NVIDIA and all these other stocks that are massive, they're ripping to the upside and giving returns. You have to have the catalyst as the reason that now it's going to be outperforming other things. And again, just going back to Florida, in my opinion, we can't be pricing in Florida because, it's a 50-50 at best that it passes at this point, and the market is unable to price in something that is that unsure. So
I'd be curious to see how some of these companies trade in the leading up to like 1-2 weeks out, because as you said, you can't price that in. It's literally 50-50 at best right now. No one knows, right?
Yeah. I mean, as we get closer, we'll get more data as far as poll results and things like that.
Good point.
And so in Colorado, when Colorado and Washington were legalizing, I was playing the penny stocks back then in cannabis, and the run up, it did run up, a solid couple of 6-8 weeks before, because the polls told us this is very likely to pass. But if the polls tell us it's a coin flip, market cannot price that in accurately. Yeah. And I think it's going to be more, if we are going to see a little bump up into the vote, it'll be a little bit further ahead than just a week or two. So I'm going to be looking, potentially 4 to 6 weeks ahead for that relative strength to potentially show up in some of those Florida names.
Yeah. Tony writes SNDL is on sale today. And actually in one of our podcasts, we have what's called Small Cap Sunday. And our analyst basically walks us through on the difference between what's on sale and what's a trap. Do you ever look at things like that? And like, how do you help identify one versus the other?
Honestly, I don't. And if I view things like that in my mindset, it leads to poor trading returns. You know, for me, if I view something as, for me, the market price, the here and now, is the only truth in markets. And yes, the market can be wrong at points in time, but perception is everything, and market cap is not everything. We've seen market cap in both directions get to insane levels that don't make sense. And so, you know, I care more about the price action. You know, someone says it's on sale at 185, and that doesn't mean anything about the possibility it drops to 165. And so I just don't find it as a profitable strategy to be viewing things in that way. I know some people are able to do it. You know, Warren Buffett does it, but it's just not what works for me.
Yeah.
Certainly not in this sector.
Yeah. All right. Do we have, is it SNDL, or do we have Trueleaf up right now?
This is SNDL, but we'll pull back up Trueleaf. So Trueleaf, again, this is the daily downtrend. Keep it simple. If every single bounce is setting a daily lower high, nothing changes. So we topped out at 1002, then we topped out at 985. And on this current bounce, anything under 985 is just another daily lower high. And so we've got to change that. There's only two ways you change that trend. You either break the daily lower highs and then confirm a daily uptrend, or you get up to resistance and fail and then confirm the daily uptrend. So again, if it's just these little dinky bounces, we're going to keep heading down. And, you know, my position at 840 right now, I'm still going to give it a few days to play out, but I have no attachment to it whatsoever. I'll ditch it very quickly if we're heading back down and watching MSOS to see if that 688 level is coming into play. Because if that breaks, again, it increases the probabilities that all of these individual names will see a fresh low. Yeah.
All right. Last one is the blue chip stock, the space GTI. What are we seeing?
So GTBIF tightening up here. I'm viewing this as just a little, you know, this is the market trying to determine fair value in the short term in terms of supply and demand. And the most important support for me is 11. And we've got resistance up at 12.12 and just waiting for one of those two levels to break. Nothing's going to change until one of those two levels breaks. I do have a little position here as well. Same thing, grab some for the potential of a bounce. Right now, it's looking like it's not really shaping up, but it is definitely, you know, let's look at GTBIF divided by MSOS, and we can see that it is, again, it's up at the strongest that it's ever been.
Yeah.
A couple days ago, we hit it, and we're still right up there right now. But again, it's just relative strength. It is the leader in the space on the US MSO side of things. And maybe that changes. You know, it changed when we started getting DeSantis saying the vote's going to take place. Trueleaf took over for a bit. And so, you know, Trueleaf can take over a bit if the vote in Florida passes. But in the absence of that, it's definitely Green Thumb as the lead bull. And really, it's just the lesser bear at this point.
All right. So big takeaways here today. I think obviously no volume in place, but GTI still remains the lead bull amongst the industry for what there is right now. 220 is the support that we look for high tide. And as well, we should always be looking closely at some of the latest polling numbers leading up to that election in Florida come later in November, because as it sits right now, it's pretty much 50-50, and that has not been priced in, which is all compelling and probably accurate information. So listen, appreciate you checking in as usual. As usual, people, if they want to find you, can go on to Twitter. Your handle again is @ChartGuys. And if any charts or any programs, conferences, that sort of thing that you want to get people to sign up for, where can they find you?
ChartGuys.com. And I want to make one more note before I head out here, just to go back to your hemp conversation, just an experience of mine. Earlier this week in a city in North Carolina, I head into a hemp shop, 30 jars, different kinds on the wall. I want a pre-roll of CBD. They don't have it. It's only THCA. It's like, I know where to get the real thing. Like, I'm looking for some CBD and I couldn't get a pre-roll of CBD. And I was just astounded. It's like, well, we've got low THCA. It's like, no thanks.
Seriously?
Yeah.
Wow. Orange, you want to bring Anthony back in based off that comment? But yeah, that's interesting to say that
makes total sense.
Why is that?
They're just cannabis shops.
Yeah.
I mean, they're not really in the best. If you're in the best interest of a consumer and you're a hemp shop, you should have high CBD flower. Because that's really what people should be going there for.
Yeah.
I mean, Dan's completely right. That would have surprised me as well. I would have been like, guys, what's going on?
Yeah. All right, sir. Good seeing you. And as usual, we'll see you next Friday. Okay.
Sounds good. Have a good one, guys.
All right, Dan.
Have a good weekend, Dan.
Appreciate your time. All right. It's Friday. And that was interesting, some of the takeaways, but obviously outlining some support that he's watching with high tide as well. GTI is the leading bulls. But, one important thing that he did mention, too, is that we got to look closely at the trending polling numbers that lead up to that election, because you can't price in the vote going into the election because it's 50-50. But I do think that those polling numbers definitely are going to be a play for how these stocks start to perform leading into that election night. But
oh, dude.
Can you imagine?
If polling for Florida starts polling like below 60 for some random act of God, these stocks are going to start selling off.
But if they don't, the other way.
Well, I mean, yeah.
Either way, Kim's obviously she's got her work cut out, but she's prepared for it. And I know there's going to be a strong push. They've raised a lot of money towards this campaign right now and making a lot of appearances. But yeah, her schedule is going to be pretty busy between now and November. But 66.
I don't want to get ahead of myself. But she's good with or without it. It's everybody else that would be reconsidering what's going on.
Good point. But I think if she raises that kind of money and has put, that much time and effort, not saying that she's not thinking this, that you're not thinking she's thinking this, but clearly she sees the upside potential. And
oh yeah,
that's what you love as far as an investor. She could sit on her laurels and basically and just basically like, I'm good either way, but here she is putting her neck out in the line and, because she sees the upside potential. And why does she see upside potential? Because that company would grow immensely. What's the market?
They're principled operators. I mean, at the end of the day, like they do want to see people freely consuming cannabis.
Yeah.
It's not just about the bottom line. Like people, if they want to smoke weed, they should be able to smoke weed. And I truly do believe that the guys and gals that are at the heads of all these companies at the end of the day, like they are here for progress, as well as economic gain.
Yeah. But what do you look for as far as like, when you invest in a company? Here she is in the situation that she's in, but she's always being proactive, obviously, to take her company to the next level. And yes, there's a lot of people positioning themselves within the Florida market, but definitely she's leading the charge. But anyway, polling numbers, we will watch those closely, especially as we head into the early weeks of October leading up to November 5th. It'll be telling, to say the least. And time's flying because here we are almost at the end of June, heading into July. It's going to be here in no time. But what time is it? It's Friday. We're approaching an hour in this podcast. That's okay. We weren't on this week, but it is time for our favorite segment of the week, Friday's Mic Drop with Quab. Cue the music. What are we talking about today, my friend? Let's put him in the middle, Arns.
Greetings, Earthlings.
Greetings.
I don't have all the answers, but I want to plant some seeds. I'd like to dig into two words that I think are holding back the industry a little bit: smoke and high.
Are these legal? Are these legal seeds or Chinese market hemp seeds?
These are all legal.
Good.
Yeah, maybe we'll do high next week, but this rant's partially inspired by Ben Kovler's tweet. He repeatedly says smoke more weed as sort of like a personal tagline in some of his 4:20 a.m. tweets. Also, Emily Paxia once said to me that cannabis still needs its got milk moment. So I want to plant some seeds and get some people thinking about this.
Okay.
I believe that the emphasis on smoking is holding the whole industry back. We've touched on this with the cannabis beverages and how they're more appealing to the first-time consumer. So flower is king right now in a lot of states if you look at the numbers, but does that mean it always will be, right? So I get it. The ceremony of it all, especially if you grow it yourself, you grind it, you roll it, you light it, you pass it, it hits quick, just right. I believe me, I get that. But first adopters don't really want to start smoking anything. They've been taught their whole lives to not smoke. And even some of the longtime smokers like myself want healthy alternatives to just flower.
So what's the solution?
Edibles hit the body for hours. Live resin for the win. Tinctures have the whole plant. It's a different high for sure, and that's a problematic word, the high. But it's good for the body. And then vaping at about 400 degrees releases everything: terpenes, major and minor cannabinoids. and honestly, destroying, combustion is not the most efficient way to release all that with flower. It can destroy a lot of the stuff.
Do you think people view vaping and smoking differently?
Well, I'm not talking about carts. I'm talking about a dry herb vaporizer. So Stores and Bickle famously has the Volcano. I have an Arizer for comparison's sake. It's a digital vaporizer. Yeah, the Mighty. Is that the Venti?
It's the Venti.
Yeah. So, I mean, those are great because you can take that same flower instead of just rolling it or putting it in a dirty ass pipe and destroying a lot of stuff with combustion. You're vaping it. It's not accessible to the first time consumer, but for the real heads out there, it's absolutely something people should have. So when all these brands are zigging, try zagging. That's my takeaway. So I'd like to see more aspirational lifestyle brands that emphasize, activity like hiking and creativity like painting and wellness, rather than just, sort of born in the streets, neck tattoos, flowers, hip hop. I mean, that there's a segment there, but I'd really like to see some different brands try to do something a little bit different and appeal to people in a different way. And form factor is one of those ways. So I'll leave it.
All right. We just got Mungie Boy writes petition to get Guap to drop another rap like he did the first time he showed up. That was pretty sweet.
I think I'll do it. I wore the glasses from the first appearance just as a throwback. So I think maybe I'll come back. I'll recreate the magic and wear the exact same outfit. And
a little zoom, that pan left to the right with your bong or whatever, and then you logged off. And I was just like,
it's right here.
This guy knows
it's still right here. But yeah, that was funny. I remember that, and I didn't mean to sign off at that exact moment.
Well, the way you did it was perfect. It was like, this guy's in and he's out, and it was amazing. Happy Burner writes, cannabis infused shampoo is the answer, Shad. Cannabis infused shampoo.
I think that's sarcasm.
Yeah,
I want to absorb my cannabis through my scalp. Also, I've joked around that toothpaste. That's the new thing that's going to take over. Just
cannabis infused toothpaste.
All right, Christopher Brady. Interesting suppositories. All right.
No, but Christopher Brady, do some research because there actually are several brands out there that do CBD infused feminine products. Yeah. I mean, it was literally the first investment I made in the space. It was a company called Foria. Foria.
I remember them.
I would remember them. They're in Ulta. You can go buy their products in Ulta right now.
Yeah.
They're doing very well.
Cannabis is great for cramps and all sorts of menstrual pain. So it's just another application, and absolutely, it's a wellness product. People forget, all this blazing and getting high. I'll talk about high next time, but all this sort of culture, it's stoner culture, and believe me, I am well versed in it. But in terms of getting that first time consumer or people long term, I think we can hit this from a much different angle. Zig when they zag.
Yeah.
All good stuff. All right. Well, we got caught up. A lot of stuff happened this week, but all in all, good week to say the least, for what we experienced and what we saw. We will have that content for the High Tide dispensary probably Tuesday morning. We're also going to have a stock analysis report on MaryMed that we're going to post actually tomorrow. And then as well, our Small Cap Sunday podcast that I do with our analyst, Bill McNarland. That'll be Sunday night at 8 o'clock. We're revealing our next 5 companies, small cap companies with big upside potential that we've done research on that you may not be aware of. So make sure to log on Sunday night, 8 o'clock. And as usual, we will include one of our cannabis companies. Actually, I will say one of the companies will be a cannabis company. It'll be our cannabis featured company of the week. As usual, please subscribe to our Baked In newsletter. Lots of research reports that we have unveiled over the last week or so. So if you haven't got a chance to do so already, please subscribe to our Baked In newsletter, which is right here in the lower thirds. Scan that QR code and make sure to smash the like button, Leave some comments. What'd you think of the show today? Anything you want us to tee up for next week? We'd love to get your feedback. And please make sure to share this video within your network. Gents, enjoy the rest of your day, and we'll see you back here on Monday.
See you soon.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Bye.
It's the terps, twerps.
Hey everyone, thanks for watching our latest podcast. Lots of momentum building. You guys getting all excited? Leave comments below. Again, we want to take this viral. Smash that like button and make sure to click on that bell for all notifications as we start to bring on bigger and bigger guests. Don't forget to subscribe to our daily newsletter, the Baked In newsletter, by logging on to thedalesreport.com. And we want to take this viral, as I said, and make this community grow. So make sure to subscribe on that channel because we wouldn't be here without you. Thanks again, everyone, for watching.